Yo, what's up guys, and welcome to a new video. Today we're going in depth on Fury Warrior, giving you everything you need to know to be a good raider and Mythic Plus player in 10.2. We'll split this video up in two parts covering both Raid and Mythic Plus, and I'll make sure to leave timestamps in the description down below so you can easily navigate which parts you are interested in. Before we get started, let's briefly touch on what it is our tier set actually does. For our 2 set, we get 50% increased damage on Odin's Fury, and our next 3 Bloodthirsts will deal 150% increased damage. And for our 4 set, we'll get 2.5 seconds cooldown reduction on Odin's Fury for every crit we get using Bloodthirst. Now that we know what we can expect from our tier set, we can jump into the talent build, starting off with our Mythic Plus build. First of all, you'll notice that we made quite some significant changes to our talent build, changing up our playstyle quite drastically. The most notable changes on the left tree is that we changed out from Berserker's Torment and now instead opt to play Titan's Torment. We make this change because it goes hand in hand with our tier set going off Odin's Fury. And secondly, we are, as of the latest sims, not using Uproar anymore. This has to do with some changes on the right tree, making it harder to align our roar as it is on a 1-minute cooldown. For the right side of the tree, we opted out of all the talents increasing the strength of our Raging Blow. This is because we won't be using this ability anymore since it gets replaced by Annihilator. Because our tier set enhances the damage of our Bloodthirsts a lot, we instead focus more on buffing them up by playing talents like Vicious Contempt and Blood Craze and Deft Experience. The other notable thing is that instead of playing Anger Management, we now choose to play Reckless Abandon. We do this because it gives us Bloodbath, which will deal more damage with our tier set. And lastly, we will, instead of playing Onslaught or Ravager, now be playing with Odin's Fury. This is kind of a no-brainer since the entire tier set is revolved around Odin's Fury and Bloodthirst. There are some upsides and also some downsides to this build, what we need to cover. Because we use Annihilator, we do not have access to Raging Blow anymore. This means that we will now have to be more efficient in our rotation to prevent downtime. Luckily for us, the Warrior Theory Crafter has spoken out his concerns about this, which have led Blizzard to lowering the cooldown of Slam. That will make our rotation more smooth and reducing the possibility of running out of buttons. The other downside is that we would have to be more thoughtful about using our major cooldowns. Since we do not have the ability to lower the cooldown of our Recklessness anymore, we are bound to it being a 1.5 minute cooldown. So we'll have to use our cooldowns more wisely throughout the dungeon and plan a bit more ahead instead of being able to throw them on cooldown. For the upsides, we see that we've become more bursty than we've ever been before. Odin's Fury combined with Thunderous Roar gives us a lot of extra uncapped AoE that will be very noticeable doing large pulls. The second upside is that our single target damage has increased quite drastically from how it was been before. We'll be able to do way more single target, and also our priority target will be way higher because of the heavy critting Bloodthirst and Bloodbaths. Now that we've covered the talent build, we can start taking a look in the rotation that we play in Mythic Plus. Whenever we engage a pack, you will want to start off by using Recklessness to increase our rage generation from both Charge and Odin's Fury. Next up, we'll charge to generate rage, followed up by an Odin's Fury. Since we use Titanic Rage, we will instantly be enraged, and we will also get 4 stacks of Meat Cleaver, meaning we don't have to start the pool off using a Whirlwind straight off the bat. Then we'll use a Rampage, followed by our first Bloodbath crit from our tier set. Right about now, the initial bleed from Odin's Fury will have run out, meaning that we can send our Avatar followed by Thunderous Roar. At this point, we will want to keep following up abilities with the following priority. We will use Odin's Fury on cooldown. You use Whirlwind whenever we don't have Meat Cleaver stacks, use Bloodbath whenever available, use Rampage when you don't have Bloodbath, use Bloodthirst when you don't have enough Rage to use Rampage, gaining your stack of Bloodbath, and use Execute as a filler when you can't press Rampage or Bloodthirst. As your final resort, you have Slam as a filler, which you can press when you don't have either of those abilities above. This rotation is quite a bit different from what it would normally look like playing the build from the previous season. I would advise you to practice a little bit with this build because errors in the rotation can leave you with some potential downtime. There could be moments where you have messed up by having everything on cooldown and don't have enough rage to use Rampage. Whenever this happens though, try not to break your monitor, as most of us will likely want to do at that point, because you will get a Bloodthirst in about 1.5 seconds. Since Blizzard is known to tune and tweak a lot of trinkets in early season, we'll briefly talk about the best simming options currently available. The Cataclysmic Signet brand seems to be simming very high for Mythic Plus scenarios and is currently considered one out of the 2 best choices to go for. This trinket will be dropped by Smoldering in the new raid, but do be aware though that you will take damage from this trinket too, so use it wisely. The second trinket on the list is the Augury of the Primal Flame, dealing a massive chunk of damage currently, which will most likely get nerfed due to the excessive amount of damage it currently does. This trinket drops from the final boss Firok, and it will most likely be hard to acquire in the first weeks. If you are less of a raider, you could try to target Might of the Ocean, which is a similar trinket to Vial of Animated Blood we all know from previous season. This trinket drops in Throne of Tides and it is more easily accessible to it being able to be farmed over and over again. For the tier set slots we will want to try and focus on the helm, shoulders, chest and hands, as these are currently giving the best stats for us. Of course this could be different for you based on your current gear and stat weight, so make sure to simulate your character to find the best gear upgrades currently available to you. Since there isn't any information available about the legendary yet, we can't really talk in depth about the effects yet, but we can safely assume that simply because of the item level this will be the best in slot to use for your main hand. Last on the list we'll have Embellishments. For Mythic Plus, one of the best embellishments will once again be the Frostfire Legs of Preparation. When engaging a pack this will give you a significant burst of haste, and it has a very high uptime due to the chaining and fast pace of Mythic Plus. Secondly, the Shadow Flame Tempered Armor Patch will still remain a very solid choice, upping your single target even more. Despite its recent nerfs, this will still be one of the best options. As a good alternative, you can opt in for the Allied Wrist Guards of Companionship. This will pretty much always be fully up, and it gives you a good chunk of versatility, boosting both your damage done and reduces your damage taken. Later into the season, the second embellishment usually defaults back to Elemental Lariat, but since we barely have any sockets starting the season, this will be a significant decrease at the start. Now that we've covered the Mythic Plus section, we can move on to the talents, which we will be using for raid. Our raid build is fairly similar to our Mythic Plus build, with only a few changes made on both the left and right side tree. Instead of choosing Thunderous Roar, we will instead choose Spear of Bastion, just like we did in the previous tier. On the right side of the tree, we only made a few changes. We replaced our Whirlwind talents and instead opted in for Ashen Juggernaut and Massacre. Furthermore, we swapped Titanic Rage for Dancing Blades, as this will be a significant single target increase. Lastly, we changed our Slaughtering Strikes and instead take Blood Craze. This will once again be a net single target gain that we can opt into. Now that we've gone over the talent builds, we can take a look at the single target rotation. Luckily, with our raid build, we have a bit more flexibility in using our Whirlwind as a filler instead of it being a mandatory 5th global to upkeep our Meat Cleaver. Whenever we engage a pack, you will want to start off by using Recklessness to increase our rage generation from both Charge and Odin's Fury. Next up, we'll charge to generate rage, followed up by a Bloodthirst and potentially a Slam to get to 80 rage. Then we'll use Rampage, followed up by our first Bloodbath crit from our tier set. Right about now, the initial bleed from Odin's Fury will have run out, meaning that we can send our avatar followed by Spear of Bastion. During our initial burst window, we will want to use as many Bloodbaths and Rampages as possible. And this will be the priority following your burst. Use Odin's Fury on cooldown. Use Bloodbath whenever available. Use Rampage when you don't have a Bloodbath available. Use Bloodthirst when you don't have enough rage to use Rampage, gaining you a stack of Bloodbath. Use Execute as a filler when you can't press Rampage or Bloodthirst. Use Slam as a filler when you can't press Rampage, Bloodthirst or Execute, and use your Whirlwind as the last resort. Since we are using Ashen Juggernaut, there will be one change coming into Execute phase. During Execute phase, Execute will actually take priority over Bloodthirst, but it will not however take priority over Bloodbath. Now that we've covered the rotation, it's time to once again take a look at the trinkets. Like I said in the Mythic Plus section, Blizzard likes to adjust tuning on trinkets, so these might change throughout the season. Firstly, we will want to use the Cataclysmic Signet brand, which is currently almost 5k ahead of any other trinket. Like I said before, this trinket is most likely going to see some tuning changes due to its incredible damage output. One of the side effects of this trinket though is that it will give you significant damage from using this trinket. So during progression this might become a banned trinket on healing intensive fights. Secondly, we see Razan's Gleaming Eye. This trinket currently seems second strongest with a passive effect dealing damage and leaving a dot on the target. This trinket is easily farmable since it drops from Mythic Plus, making it a solid second option. A very solid alternative would be Might of the Ocean. This will give you a burst of main stat with the cooldown lining up perfectly with our major CDs. This trinket also drops from Mythic Plus, making it way easier to farm than the raid trinkets mentioned before. For the tier set slots we will want to once again try and focus on the helm, shoulders, chest and hands, as these currently give the best stats for us. Of course this could be different for you based on your current gear and stat weight, so make sure to simulate your character to find the best gear upgrades currently available to you. Just like we covered in the M Plus section of this guide, we don't have any information on the legendary yet, but we can safely assume it will be best in slot and to be equipped in our main hand purely for its item level already. Lastly, we'll take a look into the embellishments for raid. Even though Shadow Flame tempered armor patches have taken a significant nerf, they are currently still simming the best option for single target raid scenarios. A good alternative for more survivability would be allied wrist guards of companionship. This embellishment will give you less DPS in exchange for some more survivability. And lastly, we have the undulating Spore Cloak. This embellishment has seen massive nerf, and this is only useful if you want to go even more defensive on the cost of a big chunk of damage. Do be aware though that since the nerfs to Spore Cloak, it is in most scenarios not worth swapping for either of the other options. And that is pretty much everything there is to cover about Fury Warrior in both single target and AoE scenarios. I want to once again express that from previous experiences, Blizzard tends to tune trinkets throughout the season if deemed underpowered or overpowered. So make sure to always keep an eye out for the changes they make to your trinkets. Furthermore, gear suggestions are relative to stat weight. The best way to find out what gear fits for you is to just simulate your character. If an item is biz for me, that doesn't have to mean that it's biz for you. That being said though, I hope you enjoyed the guide and learned a thing or two. And if you liked the video, make sure to give a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And as always, if you have any comments or questions, make sure to leave them in the comments down below, or ask me live on twitch.tv/JuventusTV.